Hi, everybody. I'm Momma Atheist. This is Living Critically. Thank you for coming. Sorry, we were a little off tonight with the time, but no big deal. We're here now. And thanks to everyone for coming. We have tonight Aaron, who's known as the Brazen Atheist, and my guest co-host is MathPig. Let's have MathPig, you start and say who you are and what you do, please.
Oh, I don't know what I do. I just talk on the internet and people come and listen to me sometimes. Most everybody in the chat will know who I am. MathPig on YouTube, just come and find me. Hangouts twice a week, some things on a Thursday with Richard. It's fun. We usually have a bit of crack, so feel free, come by, say hi.
All right. And I'm so excited about having you here today, Aaron. We have guests on, but you just think we have a lot in common. We connected right away, I think, when we met on MathPig's channel. So thank you so much for coming. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. No, I was quite excited to meet you too. It takes me a while to find people sometimes on Twitter, and then I'm always excited when I see new people. So I'm Aaron Lewis, Brazen Atheist on Twitter and Facebook. I'm a author, a former stripper or exotic dancer, if you like that better, and I guess that's about it. Not that exciting.
Downplaying yourself a little bit, but that's what us women do. And happy Mother's Day to you as well. Since you're a mom, your son is, around my son's age. So, we have teenage boy problems together,
yeah.
I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, in terms of how you were raised and in religion, how was that? What were you raised as, and when did you leave?
I was raised Catholic. I'm the last of 6, if that proves my Catholicness.
Right.
And my 5 brothers and sisters were, they're 14 to 9 years older than me. So I'm the baby. And by the time I came around, we didn't really go to church all that often. So we were sort of Catholic. You told everybody you were Catholic. We had crucifixes and rosaries and Christmas and, Bible stories and stuff like that. But it wasn't really super strict or like fundamental Catholicism. It was really just pretty generalized. So a lot of times I didn't take it really all that seriously. As I started to get older and ask questions, I got very suspicious because I never really got any satisfactory answers. And so I was pretty young when I started to kind of let go of the dogma and the teachings of Catholicism itself. It took me a little longer to actually let go of the idea of a God. But I wasn't really that old either. So for the most part, I just pretended because to not is the worst thing ever. You tell somebody you don't believe in God or, the whole Jesus Christ story or the stories in the Bible are a little implausible. And it's kind of like you just walked up to them and farted. They really don't get a good reaction. So for a long time, I just kind of played along and thought, okay, this is the shtick we're doing. And so there you go.
Yeah, I totally get that. The pretending, I was raised Catholic as well. And I honestly don't think I ever really believed, but it was 15 when I thought to myself, no, I absolutely don't. This is not me. But there was a long time that I didn't tell anybody at all, but especially my mother, who was, very Catholic, still is very Catholic. In fact, she thinks that the word atheist is a bad word. She has trouble actually saying it, and hates the fact that I am. So, I was rightfully scared, although I did find out in my 30s or late 20s that my father doesn't believe in God. So, even years after she knew I was an atheist, she never bothered to tell me. he didn't go to church with us except on Christmas, but I thought that was because he was raised Mormon. So, but no, yeah, he just doesn't believe. I think he moved here from Holland. He was 9 or 10. I don't know what they were there, but I know they became Mormon when they moved to America. So I don't know if it had to do with flipping religions or just the fact that Mormonism is kind of batshit crazy.
It really is.
Yeah. But no, he doesn't believe, and nobody told me. So, and it would have been nice when I came out to my mother as an atheist, if she would have said, "Oh, you're not the only one," and it's not the way it was. So the rest of your family, are they still religious or?
I have a sister who is agnostic. My father claims to be deeply religious, although I was kind of shocked when somebody told me that very recently. I was like, really? That was my exact words. Really? Okay. Missed that. We're not very close, so. My brothers are at least believers in God. One of them is like evangelical Christian. My other sister, I'm not really sure where she stands. My mom, shortly before she passed, we had a conversation about it and my atheism, and we had a talk about it, and I was a little worried, but my mom and I were very close, so I wasn't really afraid of what she was going to say. And I was already a stripper, so it was kind of one of those things where it was like, I'd already been dancing for like 15 years, so I kind of figured that all the shock was already gone. And so she admitted to me, although she still identified as Catholic, even right before she passed, we did the last rites with a priest and all that stuff, an Irish priest actually, which was kind of funny. He had an accent like yours. And she really said that she was agnostic, and she didn't use that term, but she said that she wasn't sure. She just said that she really wanted to believe. But she also said that she didn't think that the God that she thought existed would have any problem with me not believing. So the disappointment for me is that she didn't really say any of those things to the rest of my family. So when I told them that I was atheist, I got a lot of pushback. Some that I really wasn't expecting. A lot of like questioning my morality and ethics and things like that, which actually was kind of hurtful because I'm still the same person. I just don't believe in God, and I don't believe that I need a supernatural being to tell me how to not be an asshole.
Right.
So I was really kind of taken aback, and I knew that we'd had some other political and ideological differences, but I did not expect really the kind of hurtful things that were said, and basically the denial of my non-belief, where they just refuse to accept it, and then they just tell you, oh, well, you don't really feel like that, and it's like, okay, that's great. How the fuck do you know?
Yeah.
So, but I grew up with the word atheist as, devil worshiper and evil, and it was associated with really bad stuff. So even when I was an atheist and I knew that I didn't believe anymore, I never actually used that word because I didn't understand the actual definition of it.
Yeah.
When I started reading, I've always been into reading mostly fiction. And when I started reading nonfiction books and started to get into some of like science and things like that, and then actually I think my first like real atheist book was Penn Jillette's God No. Mm-hmm. And that was when I really understood what the definition of the word meant. And I was like, holy shit, I'm an atheist. And I've been one for a long time. I just didn't know what that was called. And there's a subchapter in my book where I write about, in my book, Expose Yourself, which is my newest one. I write about the word atheist and how I felt as coming out as a stripper and telling people as a stripper, there's a lot of stigma and stereotypes that go along with that word. And I'd kind of gotten used to that. I'd gotten used to the shock, the stereotypes, and telling them, no, I'm not a hooker. My, boyfriend doesn't smoke pot and play in a band and, all that kind of stuff. Nobody beats me. I wasn't molested, so I went through all that stuff. And so when I came out as atheist, I was really shocked at how much harder that was. So I describe it in my book as another dirty word, because after I came out, it really blew me away, the reaction I got, because I'm like, how is it cool and you can deal with me being a stripper, but you can't handle atheist? And then you go through the whole thing where you're dispelling the stereotypes. I don't eat babies. I don't worship Satan, which is actually really ridiculous when you look at the actual definition of the word, which is really benign. But I grew up thinking that it was evil, and that atheists were really like, demon spawn of the devil and out to kill people.
Well, that's the thing. The word is just, it's one word. It means one thing. We had a discussion earlier on my channel with a person who asked the question to a group of us as atheists, do any of you stand by the commandments in the Bible? And the analogy I made, it was like asking an atheist what's their favorite ice cream. Every single atheist is different. It just covers that one question, the one answer. That's it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of theists have that issue is, they see us as our own religion, which is said to us a lot. You subscribe to the cult or the religion of atheism. It's like we have one thing in common. We don't believe there is enough evidence for God. That's it.
I once watched a documentary that was around, religion and what can be defined as a religion and stuff. And they did all this, when they had Christianity and Catholicism and Muslims and stuff. And at the very end of it, they actually, through a definition, proved that Coca-Cola could be defined as a religion. It has fans, it has money and things like that. And under certain definitions, you can, but atheism is not a religion. It's literally, as we say, that one question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, and I thought religion was defined, to have a religion, you had to believe there had to be a deity involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure that they completely understand that. And I think there's also the issue of, just not getting, it's so hard, at least I know for my mother, it is impossible for her to wrap her head around the fact that I don't believe. Like, she just can't imagine it, even though she has been married to my father for 50 years, so it's not like she doesn't know any atheists or understand it at all. But that's not something that I'm sure they discuss.
Under that thing, as Erin discussed earlier with her family and things like that, they find it hard for other people to believe that, because it boils down to, as we've all seen, you just choose not to see him. You choose not to believe, So even though your father may define himself as an atheist, your mother, in her mind, well, he's with me, he goes and does this, so he obviously knows God is there, even though he chooses not to worship. So the difference with you is, not only do you make the stance where I'm not going to worship, you scream and shout about it. You name it. You have a YouTube channel, So you're definitely taking the option of choosing to not see him or move away from it. So that's where I can see the slight difference in it.
Yeah.
The sense I got with my family is that it threatened their own belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really, that's really the sense I get from a lot of people, is that it challenges them to realize that you don't have to. Because for a lot of time I tried to believe. I wanted to believe because I felt it was weird. I was afraid of being ostracized. I felt like I should believe because that's what everybody else did. And so I really, really gave it a shot. But I could never, and that's actually where Penn's book came in. He has an analogy about a pebble in your shoe that, sometimes rolls to the back of your shoe and you don't feel it, but eventually it comes up front, you're stepping on it, and that little pebble is your doubt. And for me, it was like a boulder. It was like I could never really ignore it. So I would try to pray and I would try to do the things that I was supposed to do as a believer. And I could never shake the feeling that I was talking to myself, or there was nobody listening, or there was no order, or even if there was, like if you look at people of the Enlightenment, deists, who thought that there may have been a creator that started everything, but then just walked the fuck away. Like, that makes sense to me, because I'm like, how is there somebody that's actually in charge of all this shit? And there's some really, really, really bad, horrible stuff that happens. And for me, I just could never justify that. I could never square that and be like, well, that's not a loving God. That's a fucking asshole. So even if he does exist, like, I don't want anything to do with him. He's a dick. So that was really my thought. But I think that when you say atheist, I think it challenges people to question their own beliefs. And I think it scares them to think that you could actually live and have a perspective that doesn't include a supernatural being that oversees everything. And that, like, stigma and stereotype with between atheists and actual, like, me being a stripper, was one of the reasons why I felt like it might be easier for me to speak out. And if I spoke out and I can say, hey, look, I'm an atheist, I'm not evil, that might at a bare minimum speak to people that are in my position, or that have been in my position, that they can say that it's okay to be an atheist, it's all right. And so part of my goal is really to normalize it. Because it isn't evil. Some of the nicest people, some of the most supportive people I've met are atheists. So I think when it boils down to it, doesn't really matter what you believe. It matters what your character is. Whether you think that comes from a deity or whether you feel like it comes from inside.
A lot of sorry, go on ahead, Amanda.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
A lot of religion, when it comes down to it, whenever you say you're an atheist, as you say, it puts it in their face. It makes them aware of these questions. And when you have the conversations with Christians and you push them to a certain point, it gets to the God of the gaps. It gets to, I don't know, and they feel uncomfortable and things like that. And it makes them have to question it, which leaves the possibility open to, I might, am I going to be an atheist? Why do I have to think about these things? They just accept it as the way it is, and it's easier to accept things than it is to question them. By calling yourself an atheist, you're sticking that in their face and going, look, ask these questions, think a wee bit harder.
I think, and I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here. And, most people come to God or believe in God because it was drilled into them from birth, or from at least very young. And indoctrination is kind of key into getting people to believe. Because honestly, if you knew nothing about God at all, never heard of him or the idea of a God until you were like 25, and somebody says to you, hey, this is what it is, you're much less likely to believe in that shit. Just, saying. But I think, being indoctrinated so young and having it just a part of life and just what having it introduced to you that not believing is an option and that you can question it is incredibly frightening to a lot of religious people, especially those that are indoctrinated into evangelicalism, if that's a word, or just extreme theism. So, it's a frightening prospect, and they don't really want to hear that is an option, because you're shaking the foundation of what they have known their entire lives. So
no, definitely. I think it causes some serious cognitive dissonance when that happens. And they just kind of freak out in their head. They can't think that it could be anywhere else. And I think that people like my mom, who are really good people and wanting to accept, the people around them. And that's when they start to modify the idea of God that they grew up with. My mom was raised extremely strict Catholic. In fact, I'm wearing her high school Catholic ring. My nails are gone. And it's so horrible. It's really like the worst thing ever.
I don't know.
But she modified her belief to include everybody and to be accepting, so that she didn't have to be like, oh, well, you're a bad person, you're not this, you have to, you're going to go to hell. She just let go of the whole idea of hell. She's like, nope, I'm just not going to buy that. because she still wanted to keep that belief. That's what she had from her whole life. She wasn't able to let that go. But what she did was she changed it. And what I've noticed after reading Dan Barker's book, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dave Warnock, but some of the other ex-pastors and like church leaders, it sounds like as they start to deconvert, that's what they do, is they start to modify their belief to include people that otherwise the church would exclude.
Yeah.
And then as they start doing that, I think that's how the deconversion starts to happen. With my mom, she flat out told me she just wanted to believe in God. She wanted to believe in heaven. She wanted to believe that she was going to be with her parents when she passed, and that brought her comfort. And it didn't change the way that she treated people around her. Whereas I think some really, I don't know, what's the word, devout religious people, they do the opposite. They shrink in, they change their social circle so that they're only hanging out with people that think exactly like them. And anybody that's even a little bit outside of that is, garbage or trash, or they're going to hell and that kind of stuff. So I just wrote a piece for Free Thought Today, which is the Freedom from Religion Foundation's publication. And I wrote about that, about how we have theists in our lives, or religious people in our lives that do actually, they're empathetic. They treat people with kindness. They do nice things for people. They don't push their religion or beliefs on anybody else. And they're great people. And that has nothing to do with their beliefs. It has everything to do with who they are inside. And I think that's the same thing with atheists. Just a matter of where your values are. If we have the same values, we have the same feelings, you can call it Christianity, you can call it humanism. In the end, it doesn't really matter. If you're not out murdering and raping and stealing, then fucking A, dude, we can be cool.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
My friend, Mr. Bear Atheist, asked, how did Aaron reconcile sexuality with belief prior to atheism, if at all?
I don't know. I didn't really. I'd always been a sexual person. My mother had really lightened up a lot after I was born, because she divorced my father shortly after I was born, or seriously, while they were getting divorced, I was born. I was a big oops. And she ended up dating a lot. My father was the first person she'd ever been with. And so she was very open about sexuality, and so that, was very much opposite of what she was taught when she taught me, is that nudity is nudity. We're all born naked. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being sexual. She taught me about, being safe and how you get pregnant, which is so obviously not a Catholic thing to teach somebody. Yeah. But I never looked at it as wrong. And I never really equated it with atheism. I guess I just equated it with being human. Although just recently I realized that there's a such thing as asexual. Being in such a hypersexual industry for so long, that kind of never occurred to me. I'm like, what do you mean? That exists? Yeah. And it does. But I just thought of it as a human thing, just something that everybody did. So I never thought of it as wrong or bad, unless you were hurting people.
Surprising, considering the Catholic Church. My mother was early on, she was very, don't think about sex, don't masturbate, that kind of stuff. But when I asked her to help me get birth control when I was 17, because she's a nurse, and she literally jumped on me. She was so excited about me having sex. So it was kind of a flip there. So you never know, I guess.
My mom was always about us. It was always about safety and and just being careful and making sure that you're being treated well, that you know what to look for in a partner, not getting, the clap or getting pregnant or anything like that. That was really the big deal. So I mean, from a teenager, I was a pretty sexual person. So I don't think anybody was super shocked when I started dancing. I think they were like, oh yeah, we were waiting.
Well, you would obviously say a lot of that's down to your mother and the fact that she changed and she made it, more open and more acceptable. Like, as you say, you didn't see it as a bad thing. It was just, with the connotation of stripping being a bad job, it was like, no, it's just a job. It's just what we do. We're all the same.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I really enjoyed it, and I think that's where a lot of people that go into the industry may have some hangups, and I think that's where a lot of the stigma and stereotypes come from dancers that aren't comfortable with what they're doing, and they're doing it because they feel like they need money or there was social pressure or something else, and then you end up drugs and you end up feeling shamed and you feel guilty and you have all that stuff. I never felt ashamed and I never felt guilty. I mean, I embarrassed myself a few times. I lit my hair on fire, bending over but now they use the little electric candles, but back in the day, in the late 90s, I leaned over a table and lit the front of my hair on fire. It's actually like one of my first nights ever actually dancing. I write about that in my first book. But yeah, I mean, I embarrassed myself a few times, but I was never ashamed. I was never guilty. And that's like, even my sisters grew up with that. And a lot of the girls that I worked with grew up with that kind of idea too. And I think that that's partly how some of them get into trouble, because going into that profession with that type of mindset where you might feel bad about what you're doing can lead to a lot of really unhealthy habits, bad relationships, and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I'm not ashamed of what I did. I'm open about it. I don't mind talking about it, but I also don't advocate for girls to do that unless you have a particular mindset where you're not going to fall into some of those pitfalls or fall prey to people that may be, looking for somebody to exploit those kinds of bad feelings.
Yeah, because as much as stereotypes can be a bad thing, stereotypes can be used, to give people a general idea. So as you say, you're strong and powerful and you survived it all right. I'm sure there was people in that situation in the industry that were the stereotype or had been through some of the things that the stereotype falls from. So as you say, unless you're in that strong mindset, it is still possible for you to fall down them rabbit holes and get into them problems.
Oh, definitely. It really is. And there's a lot of predators out there, men and other dancers too, really, that, look to exploit those things.
By the way, everybody, if you guys have a question for Erin, tag me or MathPig in the chat. Sorry.
I can't see the chat, so you'll have to let me know if there's any questions.
Yeah, that's why we
okay, good.
So we can ask you.
Someday I'll figure out how to do that, but yeah. My computer just didn't work as good for this, so.
That's okay. No big deal. We got
And I can be outside.
Yes.
I'm kind of happy to be outside. I'm so tired of my house.
It looks
I love my house,
there.
but I'm really tired of my house.
I think we're all fucking tired of our house.
Yeah, it's really getting old. I've done about every home project that I can think of now, and so I'm.
Do you want to come over and put a new bathroom in for me? I have a toilet to install this week.
Yeah. Aren't you in the UK though?
Yeah, it'd be cheaper to pay.
Yeah. It's gonna be a little tricky.
Did you ask B's question, MathPig? Did you ask B's question?
I didn't see the tag. I didn't see it.
Oh, ask it again, B. We scrolled back a little bit. No, I think one of the big issues, specifically with the Catholic Church, but a lot of religion in general, is that stigma when it comes to sex. And honestly, even to this day, I do feel guilty around when it comes to anything sexual, and not, overtly, but there's something in the back of my head just because it was drilled into us, not necessarily from my mother, I mean, a little bit, but mostly from the church itself and the priests and the Sunday school teachers. And it's made very clear that, sex is for procreative purposes only, and you only do.
Oh, Mama's Wi-Fi's went and twinged. You're still there, Erin?
I am. I'm here. I saw her freeze.
I'm sure she'll be back.
There's a when I was doing research for my latest book, there's a book I read by Daryl Ray, who has he wrote a book called Sex and God, and it's basically how religion influences sexuality and what you're taught. And that's actually what helped me equate how dancing had so much to do with religion and sex, and how much it actually affected not only myself, but how customers reacted. And I realized that where certain fetishes and hang-ups and things like that came from, there's a large connection of that, the shame and the guilt. And I think that's ultimately really detrimental to your sex life. I mean, it's a great part of life. It's, it's something that should be enjoyed, and it's disappointing and sad to know that people have those kinds of hang-ups and maybe missing that part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you look at the statistics of X videos and all them channels and Pornhub and all whatever they are, and a lot of it is from the South. Especially because they don't express themselves. It is a bad thing, but you're just fighting your basic human urges. We all have these urges, and as you say, it's very fucking enjoyable. So it's a matter of control. The church doesn't want you to go out and enjoy that, because it can lead to other things. It can lead to this, that, and the other, and all the rest of it. And
well, it's a means of control also.
Yes.
I think when you put those types of restrictions on such a natural biological urge, it's a means of control.
Yeah, getting used to fighting against these urges.
Yeah, I think when I write about it in Expose Yourself, I talk about telling yourself you're on a diet, you can't have a donut. And then, one day you're going to freak the fuck out and you're going to eat a dozen donuts and you're going to feel like shit. When you're fighting, and as opposed to having one donut and enjoying it and being satisfied with it. I think that's the difference. When you're really putting a lot of restrictions on those types of biological urges.
Funny, I just remembered that I bought donuts today, mostly for Angel, but not for myself. So I'm glad you reminded me of that. Sam asks, what ways of thinking are still hard for you to address about leaving your religion?
I can't say many. It was such a relief to be able to come out for me as an atheist. I'm disappointed in some of my friends and my family's reactions, and feeling like I'm not very accepted, or feeling like they just don't believe me, which just boggles my mind. How do you tell somebody what they believe or what they don't? I don't really have any hangups. There's a certain nostalgia I feel. Like I have a rosary that was passed down from somebody in my family. It's a big wooden one, and it's in primary color, so it's obviously for a child. And so I have certain symbols like that, like the Catholic ring I wear. So there's things like that where it's a nostalgia, like cultural type thing. We still celebrate Christmas. We celebrate Easter, but we do it in a very secular way. It's a matter of this is a time to appreciate life and each other, and that kind of thing. There's certainly no religion involved. In fact, actually, I kind of get a kick out of telling my kid, about Easter and Jesus dying on the cross, and he goes, "That's really sick." He's looking at me with his eyes are like this big, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "You believed what? What did they teach you?" I'm like, "I know, it's fucked up, but I swear to God, that was taught as the truth. You were taught that as the truth." And for me, as I grew older and started to evaluate that, I was like, this is not okay. Like, how come I can't watch Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's cool for me to go into a building where we're worshiping this big bloody guy on a cross? Like, that's not okay.
And as a Catholic, technically eating his body as well.
I was going to say the whole transubstantiation thing as well. Did you?
Yeah, how is that okay?
Your face says it all. It's like, what?
Yeah, but it's fun to actually sometimes. My husband is the same way. He was raised basically atheist, and so when I explained to him the whole, born with sin and having to accept Christ, and, God sent his son down to be killed, and, all these other things. It's just, when you explain it to somebody that wasn't raised that way, you really, really view it from a more objective position, and it's absolutely nutty. It just is.
Did you have passion plays growing up? Did you ever have to go see those? The very, very bloody depiction of the crucifixion that
No.
Oh no, really? Because
No.
yeah, they do. So they're called passion plays, and obviously it's around Christmas time, and it's just a short. I don't want to say skit. It doesn't seem like the right word, but they put it on for Christmas to show what happened. So it starts with some dude dressed as Jesus dragging a huge wooden cross up to the altar, and he goes for our church. What would happen was this would start at the very beginning of Mass, and he would go up there and put himself up on the cross and stay that way the entire Mass until the end, where they would finish it off and have them pull him down and put a sheet over him and carry him away. It's fucked up.
Children watch this?
It's really fucked up. To have kids watch the shit and not have any real idea of what's happening.
See, but because I think most of my family had left a lot of that stuff behind, I was really taught the sanitized version of that.
Okay.
So I didn't get a lot of the really gory parts really until I came out as atheist, and I read more, people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and things like that. And I started to look at and understand more of the actual dogma. I mean, I didn't read the Bible as a kid. Every once in a while you would get the Bible stories and the cartoons, and things like that. And so it was really sanitized. There was none of that for me. So while the general principles to me seemed kind of crazy, the actual bloody parts, the really gory parts, were just not addressed. So I didn't really actually learn about them until I was like, I don't believe in any of that. And then when I started actually reading about atheism and I learned far more about the Bible and religion as an atheist than I did as a Catholic.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of by design. I really think they do that on purpose. At least in my case, I think it was deliberate. Which was nice. It points to the fact that my family weren't complete assholes, that they actually were protecting me at some point from that.
I think there's just a lot of picking and choosing.
Yeah.
But especially during Mass, the stories that are told, and you hear, because I remember, we went to church it was Saturday. We'd go Saturday nights at 5:00 instead of Sunday mornings. But I remember hearing the same few stories over and over again for all, the years that I went to Mass. And I think that's on purpose, because they don't want you to hear the stories that don't make sense, or that are too, bloody, or have sex in them, or I think it really is a pick and choose kind of thing to expose us to it, but atheists tend to look more into it and read the whole Bible, and there's the saying that atheists know the Bible better than most Christians, and while that's not the case for everyone, obviously there are a lot of us that it is. So
Dave posted a statistic earlier that only 20% of American Christians actually read the Bible.
20%.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And then what's funny is that when you do quote certain things, they tell you that they're taking it out of context.
Oh, yeah.
And it's but I think you might have learned it out of context.
Yeah.
I think you missed the whole way that works, because
well, that's it. Yeah. It's what they can pick and choose out of the stories to fit their narrative, to make you believe what they believe. A question we had in the chat earlier from Badger. Whenever you were working in the industry, did you find that a lot of the strippers were atheist, or was there any Christians there? And to add to the question, did they have any problems with it? Did they have to justify it in their mind, or?
There's a lot of cross tattoos, but like I said, I think that's more like me having the kid rosary that I keep around, because it was, from my grandparents. More, I would say, like the universe, karma type thing.
Aye.
I believe in a higher being, God is energy, God is love, maybe more types that than the actual fundamentalism. I can't think of any fundamentalist Christians, and it may be that they just didn't say.
Yeah, well,
But I don't.
spiritualism is very fashionable, and as you discussed,
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
there.
because like I tried to tell somebody that naturopaths, and especially when I was when I was writing my book and I was doing a lot of research on chiropractics, homeopathy, naturopaths, ghosts, and things like that. And of course, I couldn't keep my mouth shut and would debunk some of those things. And yeah, wasn't super popular in the dressing room. And I told him that, ghosts weren't real and stop wasting your money on chiropractors and,
Yeah.
essential oils will, not doing nothing.
Yeah, I hear a lot
so-
of I'm spiritual but not
Yeah.
religious. So
Yeah, and honestly, I think part of that is when you're indoctrinated and grow up with those kinds of beliefs. I think it's just easier to think that. There's getting back to my book, there's a chapter I write called Some Strippers Need Jesus. And I talk about an incident at the end of the night where I'd had just an incredibly hard night. I was about to leave with nothing. You have to pay to work, in most instances, right? And I was very close to, I don't know if I'd even broke even. I was about to leave with nothing. And at the end of the night, some dude came in, he was super drunk, and I ended up having one of my best nights ever in like a half hour. And I walked into the dressing room and it was a rough night for everybody. And so the person that was in there, I was like, oh my God, I'm so relieved. So relieved. And I was like, that was my knight in shining cotton. Thank God. And she goes, yep. She goes, the universe was pulling for you, or, something like that. And in that instance, that's what she thought. She thought that's that's what happened. And somebody was out there watching, and, the stripper god or whatever decided to, hand me a drunk dude at, 2:30 in the morning, and everything worked out okay. But
a drunk dude at 2:30 in the morning. Are you serious? That's so rare. That must have been the hand of God that did that.
Yeah, totally. Or, the bartender down the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe his wife sucked. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where there needed to be a reason. It couldn't just be that this just happened. There had to be a reason for that. And sometimes people need that. I think they need to know that somebody's, or they want to feel like they're not alone. And I didn't shit in your Cheerios. I let her have it. That was fine. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for being happy for me and not being a cunt. So we're good.
When people replace the God with the universe thing, when they say, oh, the universe is looking out for you, I just want to be like, the universe doesn't give dick about you.
Yeah.
Any idea how big it is? So
yeah, for real. It really doesn't, but that's one of those things where I feel like it's just kind of benign. It doesn't hurt anything. There's no real ulterior motive there, other than, I think, and I don't want to sound derogatory, but I think that it's just like a God of the gaps. I don't really want to think about it any more than that. And I just, that's where it goes. And not everybody wants to read, nonfiction books. Not everybody wants to read. Some people are just happy with those answers, and they're not comfortable with I don't know, and they don't want to look for the answer. And that's a very convenient thing, karma and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just an easy way out. And I don't want to say lazy, but that's kind of where I'm going.
The problem I have with that, though, is because then people have the foundation of, a lot of them would be Christianity, raised in the Western world and things like that, and then they move on to the spiritualism. It's lacking that one last step. So even though they say they're spiritual and things like that, they still would lean more towards Christian beliefs and believing Christian things and being open to being manipulated through, not thinking too much into it and just going, my basic belief system I've got so far, I'm just going to let it go. If someone tells you, for example, there's chemtrails out there, do you get so far and then do you stop? Yeah. Or do and it sets that mindset that when you get to the point that you're comfortable, you just stop. You know, it's not about getting comfortable, as I mentioned earlier in my stream. You know, usually the hard questions and the truth is not comfortable.
I mean, it's not. It can be a little scary when you let that go and you realize that you're alone and you know, there isn't somebody looking out for you. But I think when you look at the big picture, it's hard for me personally, it was hard to think that there was somebody looking out for human beings in particular. When you look at the suffering and violence and other stuff that happens other places, I think especially as Americans, once again, not to be derogatory, but we tend to be ignorant when it comes to the rest of the world. In fact, I think our little time mix up here is, you know, I think everybody's in California. It's hard for me to think that, like, you know.
You said the same to me when we had
There's
mine on yours.
49 other states out there. I'm like, what? What do you mean you're not in California? Yeah. So you know, I think we live in our own little bubbles, and then you apply things to your personal experiences and forget that, you know, there's people starving and dying of, you know, preventable diseases and, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of that's where that comes from, is they don't look very far past their own experiences in their own environment.
I think studies have shown that, you know, generally in your community, your limit's in around 100 and 150 people. Your brain can keep track of 100 or 150 people, you know, remember their faces and put names with it and stuff like that. But once you go outside that number, you know, it's gone. We, as you say, we do have our own wee bubble. We have our own wee community of people that we talk to. And it's nice every now and again to throw a stone outside the circle, see who you hit wants to come back and have a conversation with you. It's definitely worthwhile.
Well, that's one of the coolest things since I've become active on Twitter, is the people I've met. It's really exciting. Like you, Momma, when I saw you pop in on the interview I did with MathPig, you know, I was really excited because I was like, wow, how interesting to be in Georgia. I've never been to Georgia. You know, I've heard about the strip clubs in Atlanta. But other than that, I don't know anything about it. I've been to Louisiana. I've been to hardly any places. And so it's given me a chance to really reach out and learn about other people and other cultures outside of California. You know, like we had tri-tip for dinner. And apparently that is that's a California thing. That's like a cut of meat you can't get someplace else. I had no idea.
What's it called?
Just like, it's called tri-tip. It's a certain kind of beef cut. Yeah, and I guess it isn't something that's like nationwide, and it never even occurred to me. Same thing with like certain fast food restaurants and, you know, certain words and things like that. There's a lot of stuff I've learned just from people on Twitter, which has really blown me away and actually made me feel very naive and ignorant and sheltered. So I want to fix that
to a certain degree.
So,
Momma
definitely.
Momma will definitely go for this. We were on a stream the other day with a friend of ours, and he used a particular word that in England is used as a type of bacon product, but in the rest of the world it's really not good. We'll tell you what it is off stream, but it's definitely it's a bad word everywhere. But he just said it nonchalant when he was talking about food, and then we all burst into stitches. It was like, did you just say that? And he was like, oh, no. And then he just dug a hole for about 3 minutes. It was very, very
just
funny.
kept going with it.
Well, I'm dying to know what it is now.
I will type it in the side chat.
Okay.
So in the private chat here, I think one of the issues that theists have and us as atheists on the flip side is that there is a community that religious people have, and they feel accepted, and like no matter who they are, what they do, or what they think outside of their belief in God, here they have this group of people, their church or whatever, that will take them in and have them no matter what. And that's something that people, for a long time at least, we were lacking as atheists, and having this community, you know, being able to connect with each other online in outside as well, but this specifically is a wonderful thing for all of us. It gives us all camaraderie. It gives us a voice, even though we're all very, very different. We still have this in common and are able to work together. And for me and my son, we moved here to Georgia 3 years ago to take care of my elderly parents. And we're from Connecticut originally, completely different world than the South, absolutely. But I tried when I got here to start a group. It was an atheist group that we were also activists against some of the stuff Trump was doing, and it actually became dangerous for me real quick. I didn't realize how horrible people can be, and we had met in a coffee shop in town, and somehow this group of right-wing religious zealots found out about us. I think because we had posted it was on a social meeting site, and that we had come together, and it never even occurred to me that this would be an issue. And we had taken a small room within the coffee shop that had a big table. We were sitting around talking, and they actually like stood outside the door and just like kind of looked at us the whole time. We're like, yeah, fine, whatever. But this happened a couple times that they had followed us, and a man followed me home one day, and I was like, that's so much for my community. Like, I can't really do this and put my son in danger or anything like that. And then it was back in, I want to say, September, that my son, I never really used YouTube. I would watch with him gaming videos or whatever, but myself never went on it, never thought to, didn't know it was available on here. And he was like, oh, check out, there's a couple of these atheist YouTubers, maybe you like them. And that's when I became introduced to the community, that I was, I went onto Twitter and just to follow some of the atheist YouTubers that I had found. And that's how I got introduced to Navardia. She's Australian. I don't know, you know who she is. We found each other. She introduced me to the other Aussies, and then all of a sudden I have this family, pretty much, because I connect more so with all of you guys than I do with anybody I can find around here. And it's not like where I live about 40 minutes outside Atlanta. And so were I in Atlanta, it would be different, but I'm not. And there's just really not much in this town anyway. But like I said, it was also dangerous for me. And here, I can, be safe and find this family of ours. And it has made the biggest fucking difference for me, because we don't feel alone anymore, because my son is an atheist as well. So it's been really amazing. And I think that's one of the things that we're very lucky, the time that we live in now, that we're able to have this community because of the internet and because of all of this. So, have you found a lot of people online and stuff that in a similar fashion?
Well, once I started exploring atheism and reading more and things like that, then I started friending or following some atheist pages on like Facebook. Friendly Atheist, I think, was my first follow. Hemet, if you're familiar with him. And then I answered an ad for Secular Nation, which is Atheist Alliance of America's newsletter, for articles. And so I wrote an article. Actually, I tweeted it out today. It was published there, and then it was also eventually published on in Free Thought about my mom. And so when I got accepted, and I'd already written my first and my second book, actually, and when the article got accepted, I was like, oh my God, somebody actually wants to like publish me. And so that kind of opened me up there. And then I submitted something else to Free Thought, and that got accepted. And then I thought their convention was in San Francisco, so it was really close. So I thought, to hell with it, I might as well go spend a weekend by myself in San Francisco and meet some people. So I went there and met the editor of Free Thought Today, and Salman Rushdie was the speaker when I walked in, who just blew me away. I didn't know who he was. I ended up, of course, getting his book and reading his book, which is great if you haven't read it, The Satanic Diary. So I found that community at the convention, and that was where I met my contributing editor, who's my FFRF chapter president. And that's when we collaborated on this book. She's my contributing editor. She helped she kind of came up with the concept and helped me out with like chapter titles and helped me out with networking and promotion. And we came up with Brazen Atheist together and all that stuff. But the convention was really where I found other people. And then I connected with my local FFRF chapter. And so I'll go and put up the secular display, and we did Free Thought Day. And so then I met those people, and they were just absolutely lovely. And not only that, but they were really accepting. So it was really easy to be a stripper and not really worry about that judgment. Like, they were so much more accepting. And I think that's because they weren't so constrained by religion and things like that. So I found a community here, but like I said, I was really naive to the plight of people in other areas, because they don't, obviously not right now, but they had done blasphemy breakfast where we go and meet at a diner. I've gone to a couple of them. My kid likes it because he can have a cheeseburger for breakfast. And, it would never occur to me that somebody would stand outside, that somebody would follow me home. We had some issues with the school, and things like that, but I've never been physically afraid like the situation you just described. That isn't something I've ever had to deal with that way. And that is actually really fucking terrifying. And I'm sorry that you went through that. That sucks.
Growing up in Northern Ireland with the whole Catholic... Sorry, go ahead, Honey. Going up in Northern Ireland with the whole Catholic Protestant thing here, it's not as much fundamental as based on religion. It's more cultural, yeah, definitely being a Protestant in the wrong area or being a Catholic in the wrong area has very, very strong connotations over here. I did experience a little bit of the Scottish-Irish thing in Vegas, which kind of blew me away. This girl asked me if I was Scottish, and I said, no, Irish. And she goes, Protestant or Catholic? And I said, well, my family was Catholic. And she got really upset and was getting ready to kick my ass. I'm like, you realize I'm American, right? I'm an American mutt. I'm not even Catholic. I'm like, both of my parents were half Irish. I mean, that's it. I can't even hold my whiskey. Why are you so mad? I didn't even get it. But she was ready to kick my ass. For nothing. I've been in
that's ridiculous.
Oh no,
I've French in me.
I've been in worse situations where I was a Protestant in an over the border down south disco for kids, and they found out I was a Protestant. I got brass knuckles in the eye, still have the scar, and I had a group of people waiting outside to God knows do what to me. Then it was it's a situation where your life where you go out the back door. It can be very... Being in that situation is not something anybody should need to be put in, whether it's a different religion or no religion at all. It's not something that should drive people to actually be like that. Because you're not in my tribe, I have to now fucking shoot or kill or pick or shout.
Yeah, that's what that is. That's tribalism.
Yeah.
But that's why, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak out and at least put my voice out there. If not as an activist, at least as an advocate. So that people can know that it is okay. But I have come to realize not only that, even though I joke about being raised Catholic and, I'm Catholic, I realized that the stuff that I went through, you're talking about the plays and stuff with Jesus on the cross. I didn't go through any of that. My Catholicism was very soft. It was all love and God loves you and Jesus is there for you and listening. And that's what I grew up with. I didn't grow up with the really scary shit that I hear. And that's another thing that has really opened my eyes. The more people that I meet in this community is the traumatic things that people have gone through due to religion or due to being atheist or that kind of thing. So that really keeps me in the community and wanting to be able to help as much as I can, even if that help is just through writing or, you know, being there, you know, a message with people fairly often, you know, if they have questions or stuff like that. So I really just try to be supportive. If I can't totally understand what other people have gone through, nobody's ever threatened me. And, you know, they'd probably regret it pretty quickly. I'm little, but I'm not one to mess with. So
as the word atheist stands, you know, we live our lives as if a God doesn't exist. You find the Christians lean so much on, you know, Christianity day to day, and lean so much on their life and what they do. Do you find that's why atheism scares them, because they have such a foundation and a core? You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, belief in Christianity is such a foundation for everything. You're just going to shatter and knock it all out from underneath them.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it scares people.
I think the word atheist to some religious people is just frightening enough. Like I said, you know, my mother doesn't like the word. And in terms of how, you know, hardcore my family was, or at least my mother and my brothers subsequently, my uncle is a Monsignor in the Catholic Church. So, you know, and he's the only, there were 4 kids in the family. He was the only boy. And that was so important to my grandmother, that regardless of the fact that he would be the only one passing on the Hogan name, half Irish myself, it didn't matter. It was more important that she had a priest in the family than to continue that. And so it was, you know, very strict having a Catholic be a part of who we are, you know, first before a lot of things. And I think now, because of that mindset, my mother sees me as an atheist before anything else, before a mom, before a scientist, before even a daughter. Sometimes I am the atheist and not, you know, not anything else as highly. So it's kind of sad. And I think there is a separation between the two of us now that wouldn't exist if I had just either never told her or still believed in God myself. So it's kind of sad.
I didn't think my family. Oops. I didn't think my family was religious at all until I told them I was an atheist, and then all of a sudden they're like, "What? What do you mean?" I know, but it was like, but what? How religious are you? It was the last time you went to church. You know, I mean, I knew that one of my brothers did, and I'm also a pastry chef, so you know, he would ask me to make things for him for his like church events and stuff, and I always did. There's no reason not to.
So you didn't make them a penis cake, did you?
I was
no,
say, so
I did not. I did not. Lots of pies, you know, and but for the rest of them, it was kind of like when I said I was an atheist, I was really taken aback that all of a sudden they're telling me how religious they are, and it's like, really? Because like that hasn't it didn't really get brought up, you know. It was just you don't talk about it. I mean, you don't like go to church, you don't like, you know. So I don't know what we don't pray before meals, you know. Sometimes Dad would make us pray, and you know, my husband and I would kind of smirk over the Thanksgiving table. I was like, oh, okay, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You realize God didn't give you this food, right? So.
Right? God didn't prepare it, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's starving like a third of the rest of the world. So what makes us so fucking special? You know.
Exactly. And that's something that I find funny when it comes to religious people, is that when they thank God when something good happens, or when they wish for something good to happen, they pray for something good to happen to them, and it does. And they put, you know, oh, thank God our father got through that surgery alive. Not thank the doctors or the nurses or the staff at all, or the meds or any of that. No, it's thank God. But if it goes the opposite direction and your father dies or whatever during surgery, then, you know, it's blame the doctors and whatever. It's not blaming God. And that's a cognitive dissonance in and of itself that is hard for us to wrap our heads around, because, you know, God is only there for the good times for you, you know? So
Yeah, and fuck you all the other times.
yes,
Now, I
exactly.
know that my mom's whole Catholic 8th grade class had a prayer group for her. She had gone in for surgery, and there were complications, and so we had about a week where she was, you know, it was kind of up and down. We didn't know what was going to happen, but she was unconscious, which is a good thing. And, you know, there was a lot of people praying during that time. The priest came in and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I wasn't, you know, telling everybody, well, that's, you know, pointless. But there were a lot of people praying. And, you know, I can't imagine what it's like to pour your heart into that belief and think that it's actually going to have some good. And then when she passed anyway. And it's like, does that make the pain worse? Because you have to now ask why, and why did God forsake me? And then you get the standard answer of, oh, well, it's, you know, must have been for a reason, or she's in a better place, which I find really fucking irritating.
Ugh.
Because, you know, maybe consciousness does go on. Maybe there is something, maybe somehow, I mean, fuck, we don't know everything. I think there's the tiniest, minutest little itty bitty possibility, but I'm not fucking hanging my hat on it.
No.
Yeah.
And I didn't take any comfort in that. And so that was actually, like I said, the article that I posted today, was really about grieving from a secular point of view without those beliefs. But when everybody around you is hanging on to those, you know, I'm not going to take that away from them if that is the way that they're dealing. And, you know, that's okay. But I do feel like I came to a place of acceptance earlier and easier than that, because I wasn't asking why. And I didn't feel let down. I didn't feel disappointed. I didn't feel like I was pouring my heart into prayer that failed. You know, I wasn't forsaken in that it was just something that happened. I understand what happened. I know why she passed.
Yeah, that's
you know,
a problem that we have.
And that was it.
It's a problem that we have, is being taught how to deal with death. You know, especially
which is pretty shitty.
Yeah. Recently enough, in this last 6 months, my auntie passed away, and we were up the stairs in the room in our last couple of days, maybe 2 or 3 days before she died. And we're all, you know, doing your thing and being around. And she was a religious person, didn't have a service in a church or anything. But there was people in the room, and I was like, I wanted to go get my daughter to come up, you know, so she could be around it and stuff like that. And there was people in the room that didn't want it. Oh, it's a sad thing, and let the kids see it. And I was like, no. Fucking bring all the kids up. And, you know, like her second to last day, she was surrounded by about 3 or 4 kids bouncing on beds and shouting and screaming. And, you know, her grandkids and her family were around her being... And we know that she couldn't speak. We knew that she could listen, but that's the last thing that she heard was, like, you know, from my point of view, knowing that there's no heaven and this, that, and the other, like, what is the happiest way you'd want to go? You know, surrounded by your family, surrounded by love.
We held, you know, the 6 of us and my father, who, although they separated when I was born, absolutely 100% loved my mom till the day she died. And my stepmother and my mom actually had a pretty good relationship. Mm-hmm. And we were all there, and we all held hands, and we all, you know, we held hands with the priest. And I don't think that she was aware before she passed. I think she was really heavily sedated, which, like I said, was a good thing. Mm-hmm. But I was glad when I was writing this article, my first draft that I had submitted, the editor came back to me and asked me how I felt with the priest was there. And, you know, I did take comfort in him, because I knew that that was what she wanted. I knew that she would have wanted him there, Father O'Connell. I knew that she would have delighted that he was an Irish priest with an accent and the whole thing. I knew that that was bringing comfort to her and to the rest of my siblings and my dad. So for me, I took comfort in that. Whether the belief was really here nor there, it didn't matter. You know, and he was kind enough to speak at her service, which we ended up doing a month later. It wasn't like a Catholic mass. You know, but no, I was glad to have him there, you know, for as much crap as I talk about religion and God and all that kind of stuff. in that moment, I was thankful to have him there. He did bring comfort, whether the belief was there or not.
See, that's quite funny from this side because we would be Presbyterian, so it's, you know, you're all going to fucking hell, you're all going to burn in hell, and all this here sort of thing. And my auntie's mother, which would be obviously my grandfather passed away, and we had the service in the Presbyterian church, which was awful. It was basically we're all going to hell in 15 minutes about my grandfather. And then when my nanny passed away, sorry, he spent maybe a half an hour, 20 minutes on my nanny, and then the rest of the time you're going to fucking hell. So my auntie, being, even though she was religious, she specifically did not want to do that. She, you know, she would consider herself Protestant and all that, maybe not spiritual, but she specifically no, I do not want a fucking service in that church with that man. He's an asshole. You know, send me to have us a mass in the funeral home. You know, there was a funeral home up the road. That's where the mass was, or the service was. We were there. There was some music, and then we went, and the body was cremated. But she was adamant. No fucking way do I want him talking us shit about everybody burning in hell.
That's really horrible. I went to a Catholic. It was Filipino Catholic service not that long ago, and it was for a friend of my family's, basically. And, you know, it was beautiful. They showed her life, this Filipino nurse, just wonderful, wonderful lady. And they're, you know, they go through the service, and it's very pleasant, and it's a remembrance, and it was nice. And then the guy starts talking. I guess, I don't know if it was, maybe it wasn't Catholic. I don't know. It's Christian, but he started talking about how, you know, we all know that we're soiled, or we're, you know, sinners, and we can all accept Christ, and, you know, he'll save us. He's our salvation. And I want to be like, you just kind of shit all over it. Like, it was great. It was a happy thing. I mean, not happy, but it was comforting, and you could see that other people were getting comforting. And then you bring up the whole Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and we can all be happy that we're not going to go to hell because we have accepted him into our hearts. And I'm like, you kind of just like ruined it. Like, it was cool, and now you made it weird. Now it got shitty. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was cool that people were taking comfort in her being in heaven or whatever they needed to think, and then all of a sudden they bring in this thing, and it's like, dude, why are you bringing that up right now? Like,
yeah, as I mentioned,
you were doing good. You were doing good, and you fucked it all up.
Yeah, you could. During my nanny's service, you could look over at my auntie, the one that passed away, and you could just see her in the fume and the blood pumping till her face. She was getting angrier and angrier. It's like, why is he saying these things? This is no relevance of anything. It's basically just a service.
It's really horrible. It's really awful. Just the idea to be told that you are just a rotten, horrible piece of shit unless you believe or practice or pray or worship a certain way. And then other than that, you're totally doomed. And it boggles my mind that anybody would want to live their life that way. And like I said, my husband was raised secularly completely. He had very little exposure to religion. So he's one of those people that, you know, I can talk about the things that I learned as a kid. You know, I tell him about Noah's Ark, and he's like, yeah, how did you ever think that was true? Or, you know, like the Bible stories. And he's like, that's insane. And the concept of original sin and all that stuff is just so gross. So it's like, when that part of the service happened, I looked over just to see his reaction, and he's like horrified. You know, he's like, what a rotten thing to fucking say. Why would you say that? So it really, when you view it from a secular point of view and from an objective point of view, and you just look at what they're actually saying, it's really fucked up. So yeah. I kind of want to make my kid and my husband go to a Catholic mass and just be like, see? You need to experience it. I need you to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So. Far too much standing up and sitting down.
And kneeling. There's some having that, you know, telling the beautiful story, so to speak, or the beautiful lie of heaven. You know, it has its merits, I understand, especially with younger people, but on the flip side of it, you're going to hell if you don't listen to what we say and believe what we want you to believe. I have such a huge problem with that. not only for the people in the church and telling children that, but the way it comes across to us, because we get told that so often. And even though we know it's not true, or we mostly know it's not true, all atheists will tell you that, or most atheists will tell you that, we absolutely don't know everything, and that's kind of the point. But there's no evidence for it. To be constantly told, you're I love you, I'm praying for you, but you're going to hell. Like,
Yeah, fuck you.
I don't understand the need to do that, especially to strangers.
Well, what kills me too is, what would it be like to believe in hell and believe that people that don't believe as you do are going to go to hell? How do you, if that's your son or your daughter or a close relative or somebody you really care about, how do you live your life knowing that, or thinking, believing in your head that they're going to burn in torment forever, and then not be pissed at the one that would send them there? This was a conversation I had actually when my son was very young with my mom, quite a few years before she passed. I think she passed when he was 10. He's 15 now. Oh no. So it must have been even earlier than that. He was little. And I would go up to her house to help. She used to live about an hour and a half away from here. And I would help clean her floors and sometimes make her food ahead of time, things like that, and just help her out. And so I would take my son, and one day I caught her sneaking up behind him with holy water, because he's never baptized, because why would I do that? And she was trying to just she never said anything to him. She never said anything to me. She was just kind of following him around with her little vial of shit she got somewhere, and was trying to just sprinkle it on him. And she goes, please, just let me put a little on him. And I said, no. And I looked at her and I said, do you really believe that God would send him to hell because I didn't have him baptized? Do you really believe that? And she looked at me and she thought for a second and she said, well, no. And I said, then what the fuck are you doing? And she put it away, and it never came up again. It never came up again after that. And she goes, no, she loved him. He was her last grandchild. So, she just absolutely adored him at every step of the way. And I watched the thought process happen in her head. And she was like, that doesn't fit with, no, my God would not send that child to hell. And I think the technicality is there's like a purgatory, or there's some kind of bullshit or whatever. But even still, she couldn't even take it there. She was like, no, he's obviously going to heaven. He's an angel. And I'm like, that's because you see him 2 hours a week, but okay.
Right?
Yeah. My wee girl now, she has been, she's been christened and baptized and all of that there. So she has now. My wee girl's mother is Catholic, has admitted that it's all cultural, has admitted these things are just an excuse to get the family round for a bit of fun and stuff. But as it stands, my wee girl is Catholic on paper and has been baptized and christened and all that. So covering your bases, she's all right. I'm fucked, but she's grand.
I don't. When it comes to a cultural standpoint, I don't really have an issue with that, especially when it comes to holidays and like you said, the community of it. There are people, I believe, that are atheists or agnostics, like my mom was, that stayed in the church because of the community of it, because of the group of it. And I really, that's the kind of stuff I don't see an issue with. I have my neighbors, I write about them. Hopefully they can't hear me. I write about them in my book. Actually in the chapter, Some Strippers Need Jesus, when I talk about just what wonderful people they are. They're Mormon, and they're like super Mormon. They've never told me they were Mormon. The only reason I know that is because I walked into their house and saw Mormon books there, and they have a license plate frame with the Mormon college on it. And that was why I knew they were Mormon. They are some of the kindest people I've ever met. They're extremely nice. They're very thoughtful. And that's why I kind of feel like there are some aspects where religious people, it is a cultural thing. It is something where, they may not have experienced, like me, they may not have experienced trauma or abuse from the church, or have been able to somehow manipulate the beliefs in their head to encompass everybody and to feel okay about that. Do I think they think I'm going to hell? I don't know. I don't even know if they know I'm an atheist. They don't, it's never been brought up. But, you know, they brought me roses from their yard and lemons. And, you know, the old guy helped a lady that fell and made sure she got home. We had like a super moon, and I guess one of them's into like taking pictures. So he came over so that our son could look at the through his telescope, and then printed out a really nice picture of the moon for him. And, you know, they're just really thoughtful and nice. And I just think there's a spectrum of believers. There really is. I think there's some that are abusive and horrible and use it to justify bad things. But I think on the flip side of that is there's some that are able, you know, that's what they grew up with. They're not going to let it go. So that's a lot of the, actually the piece that I just wrote about, it just got accepted. I don't know. I'll post it, of course, when it comes out. I don't know when it'll be published, but, you know, there is that. I think it's important to, especially when it comes to our own community, to accept the people that are just good people, no matter what they believe. If they believe in magic underwear or fucking, you know, aliens or sky daddies, at some point, I think it doesn't matter if they're good people.
Yeah. That's one thing. You say that they probably don't know you're atheist. Here in the South, when you meet new people, that's one of the first things they ask is, what church do you go to? So
I go to Our Lady of Yoga Pants, although it's shut down right now. Yeah.
I think I know the name of my mother's church, maybe, but like I don't. So you can't just make it up on the spot. Like, they'll know if you don't go to a church because you don't have something, you know, right off the bat. So that's
My husband has a friend in Alabama, and he was talking about how cheap it is there, because it's expensive to live here. It's tricky to live in California. It's not easy all the time, and it can be stressful because it is so expensive. And you know, so there's an appeal to moving someplace else where we could get. I mean, what our house cost here, what we could spend in Alabama would. I mean, we'd live in a freaking mansion. But I'm like, I don't think so, man. I don't think I could do that. I really, it scares me, especially the more I learn about people that live in the South. It's scary. That is really fucking scary how backwards it is. And, you know, I've never had grits. That scares me too.
Neither have I. My parents.
Really?
Nope, never have, never will. My parents, when they moved to Georgia, they had sold the house that they had built and lived in for, you know, their entire marriage. It was 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 2 stories, but the bottom story was a basement, you know, tiny little house. Moved into the house that they moved into here has 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, a golf cart garage, a 2-car garage with a huge bonus for, like, living in the South is much cheaper, but it's not fucking worth it. No. So I get that. The California is much more expensive, and it
even
is.
When I lived in Vegas, we got far more house in Vegas than we did in California. Even here, I live in the suburbs of Sacramento, and our house was built in 1960, and it has 3 bedrooms, but they're really tiny. And they had added a 2nd bathroom in our bathroom, but seriously, like, you can't have 2 people in the bathroom at the same time. It's ridiculously small. But we have like hardwood floors. They added a sunroom. They converted the garage, so we don't have a garage, but we have like a living room. So it really is like, it's not, you know, it's not Beverly Hills by any stretch of the imagination. It's absolutely the suburbs. But yeah, when you compare housing prices, it's ridiculous. But the culture here is definitely, I mean, we have Meal Team 6 and, you know, the well-armed militia up in the hills that get a little scary when they come out of their bunkers.
Right?
Yeah. But other than that, it culturally, it's, you know, people are pretty chill and they're pretty accepting. And I'm not really afraid to say that I'm an atheist. My son has caught some shit in school, which is one of the reasons, you know, why I'm active with Freedom from Religion Foundation, is because of religion in schools. For whatever reason, that seems to be more acceptable. But for the most part, it is really, you know, I have it pretty damn easy compared to other people. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I like to be available if I can, if there is anything I can, even if it's just to offer a little bit of support and to learn. Like I said, I had no idea how ignorant and naive I was until I really started to meet other people.
Yeah. So we've been going for about an hour and a half. We'll wrap things up, but I would really like it if you came back and did this again. So
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could continue the conversation. I would love that. And for MathPig to be the one co-hosting too, that would be great.
You've been doing all the work. You've been doing all the work, Pat.
Fuck that, I have.
Yeah, I'd love to meet your other co-hosts too, though. Australians interest me, except for their like love of snakes, which is that's a sticking point for me. Yeah,
they have all the deadly shit there. Like seriously,
yeah.
They keep telling me to come to because I, not a big fan of being an American right now. And so they keep trying to convince me to move there. And I'm like, but everything there is trying to kill you.
Ireland's lovely.
For real.
Ireland's a lovely place.
Dude, my mom went to Ireland and she took my cousin. I'm still salty about it. But that's like one of my goals. I want to go to Ireland. And I have actually the ring. You know what it's called, but it's the little heart, right? With the heart and the little, what is it called?
Claudas. Yeah, I have them in my ears.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got that from, it came from Ireland. It says it on the inside. Ooh. If I have my contacts in, I can read it.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, Ireland does look really pretty. And it looks like the kind of place where you're not going to get like a lot of sunburns. So
yeah, you can't there because they're all very white and the sky's usually very like MathPig will send me pictures from time to time of the outside and it's probably 65% gray, which I like. I don't like it being super bright,
I do, but I like it warm because I'm always cold.
I am too. We get a whole 3 weeks of the month or 3 weeks of the year where it's lovely. That's enough. Have you seen our complexion? Have you seen our complexion?
You're not selling it, man. I'm kind of happy in Northern California, I gotta say. My friend moved to Hawaii, and that's like ridiculous. It's like stupid beautiful every single fucking day of the year. It's like, really? You go during the winter, and it's like, this is winter? Fuck you. So
right. I lived in Tucson for a while. I went to school there, and I lived there later on. And I mean, you get used to the heat. It's fine, but it is bright and sunshiny 99% of the time. And it was a lot. It got to be a lot. Like, just give me a little bit of an overcast for just one day,
Yeah, the only thing about Hawaii is that everything's like wet all the time, all the time.
It's super humid there, right?
Yeah, you get a little tired of like,
humidity.
It gets a little swampy. If you have big boobs, especially too, it's like
oh God, I know.
This is fun for a week, but
living here, I would rather it be 110 degrees in Tucson where it's completely dry than 85 degrees here where it's just breathing in the water is so bad. Hate the humidity. But
you're not selling Georgia either. Jesus.
Well, no, I wouldn't, even if the weather was perfect here. Yeah, I wouldn't want that so much. But anyway, so we will chill ourselves. First, MathPig, what do you have coming up?
This Tuesday, I think I have Divine Disbelief. My diary's not right at hand, but this Divine Disbelief this Tuesday should be good fun.
Yeah.
Susan
Love Divine
and
Disbelief.
Nathan. Yeah, Susan and Nathan. Yeah, it should be good fun. Or Nathaniel, sorry, Nathaniel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Richard on Thursday?
Oh, yes. Well, we always have Richard on Thursday. We've got the Epic of Gilgamesh. We're going through that, and I shout alien overlords at him an awful lot. It's quite fun.
Okay. And Erin, what about you? What do you have going on?
This was about it for right now. I did a podcast with a horror author called Brian Keene, and that's going to come out on Thursday. I'm working on a fiction project with another author right now too. So we're going to, we talked a lot about that and my book and stuff like that. I have a virtual book tour that's going to be coming up here on the 16th. So next week, and that's going to be hosted by different bloggers. So where I'll be available to answer questions and things like that. But that's about it so far. I'm always waiting for another invite, especially because
Dick Dawson,
pretty bored.
Dick Dawson in the chat earlier, if you want to tweet at him, or Dick, if you want to tweet at Aaron, he mentioned earlier about having you in the shills, so.
And if you're ever up at, well, let's see, you're 3 hours behind me, so 7, 6, 5, 4, 4:30 in the morning on a Friday, we do this thing called Six Pack with the Australians, where it's just, 6 atheists that we just chill and drink and hang out, and it's a lot of fun. I know it's super early, but
I can't imagine drinking at 4:30 in the morning.
It took me months to be able to do it. Like it's 7:30 for me now. Yeah, it took me forever. They finally convinced me to do it. But you don't have to drink. We don't always, I rarely.
Yeah.
You could just get drunk on the Thursday night. You could get drunk on the Thursday night and stay up to 4:30 and be really drunk.
That's what's funny. That's what I was thinking of, because I used to, if I worked a Friday or Saturday night, the club didn't close till 4. So like back, a year ago, that wouldn't have been such a crazy thing. I'd have been like, sure, of course.
Yeah,
I'm up till 6.
You can come on 3 sheets to the wind and everybody else will be playing catch up. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Which actually, no, usually we have one specific person that's usually drunk before we get on. So, but honestly, we would fucking love to have you. So,
Okay, I don't know if I could promise that, but I am available.
It's my offer. And like I said,
I appreciate it.
It's Pastor, the my normal co-host here. That's his show and his channel.
Yeah.
So we would love to have you. But there was one last thing I wanted to say is that you being an author is the fucking cool. Like I have so much respect for that. I write scientific papers, but I can't imagine writing a whole book, and what you do and what you've done is incredible. Like I said, I have so much respect for you. I've told you this like 20 times today. We were talking this morning. It's amazing, and you give a different viewpoint for the community and a voice that is important and really cool. So thank you so much for that, Aaron. Really.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, I tell you what, you shoot me your address and I'll send you a book. How about that?
I wanted an autographed copy, but I was afraid to ask. So
don't worry. That's what I was working on today, is setting up on my website a place where people can order autographed copies. But I'll send you one. You can tell me how it is. My handwriting's terrible.
That is so cool. Thank you, Aaron. And thank you so much for coming. Like I said,
thanks for having me.
Really want you to come again. And we have so much more to talk about. So, and plus in private too, I know we wanted to get to know each other better. So I hope that
definitely
opens the door for that. And
dude, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And like I said, thank you for coming and on my tiny little channel, but it was really important to me. Like I really looked forward to this. So thank you for coming. And to everybody in the chat, thank you also for coming. Obviously we wouldn't have this at all without you. So we're going to say good night, and MathPig, you're going to have to shut it off.
Yeah, just do your thing. Yeah. Everybody, thanks for coming. Yeah, night, bye.
Think critically. Bye, guys.